Hey guys, Silverlord here, back again with another review, and today we'll be taking a look at the McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse Collectibuild Atrocitus Wave, Deathstorm. Now before we get into it here, let's first take a look-see at both the front and the back of the packaging. So without further ado, let's get into it. Now before we get into the meat and taters of this review, Deathstorm does come with a collectible trading card featuring a heavily photoshopped image of the figure in question here. That said, while I must admit that this is a really sick photo of good old Deathstorm here, I will say that I would have preferred some artwork on these collectible trading cards, specifically because shy of anything Greg Capullo's doing for DC Comics nowadays, the artwork from Blackest Night is some of my favorite from modern DC Comics, we'll say, because you can't beat Jack Kirby, right? It's just classic stuff, man. That said, there is a bio on the back that you can pause and read at your own leisure. But to my understanding, this is the classic Firestorm changed into a Black Lantern by the Black Lantern Batman, who's not really Batman, but kind of is Batman. I don't know. We'll talk about that more tomorrow when we take a look at that figure, but I do believe that this is the classic white guy Firestorm, not the modern black guy Firestorm merged with a white guy to become Firestorm. I never said this wasn't confusing. That said, since we're on the topic of lanterns, Deathstorm does come with a silver lantern. Kind of confusing there, though I must admit this does add a splash of color to an overall really heavy on the black plastic figure. We'll get into that because while I may not have the most extensive knowledge on comics and comic book characters, I can 100% with confidence say that this is not accurate to the Blackest Night comic whatsoever. In fact, it is more accurate to how Deathstorm appears in the CW Flash series. One of the few characters not to be mucked up by the CW, might I add. And if you tune into those shows, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But taking a closer look at Deathstorm here, should be worth noting that he also comes with the trademark McFarlane Toys hockey puck display stand that we are used to seeing with all of McFarlane Toys figures up until this current point in time. So, what is inaccurate about this guy? Because he looks freaking sick. Don't get it twisted. Despite his inaccuracies, I will give McFarlane Toys credit for giving us a quasi Ghost Rider figure for the 50th anniversary of Ghost Rider, instead of Hasbro, who can't even get a HasLab funded. Oh, I said it, bitch. That said, some things to note. The boots should be silver, and they are not. They are black. The sleeves should be white, as well as the hands. And I do believe this is accurate, and I believe this is accurate. And I think his collar and kind of, I don't know what you call that, a helmet? A mask? I don't know. His face is exposed, so it can't really be a mask, can it? It's kind of like what Gambit from X-Men has, if that puts it into perspective for you. Either way, he's, as far as the sculpt goes, accurate, but as far as color goes, he is missing some finer details that you could always touch up yourself, but here's the thing. I'm visually impaired and will gladly pay McFarlane Toys a couple extra dollars to paint the figures correctly. So, take that for what you will. I don't feel like I'm getting ripped off whenever I buy a McFarlane Toys figure because they actually shell out a little bit of extra mun to give us new molds quite often, more so than most toy companies out there, so I gotta give them kudos there. So I'm gonna cut this figure some slack for not being 100% accurate to the source material because, quite frankly, I do like the all-black look. I would have liked the silver boots and maybe some silver gloves if they were gonna change it up, but I do like this more heavy on the black look. I think it's a better look for the character. I never really cared for the white, but that is how he looks in the comic, so I have to point these things out. That said, as far as articulation goes, his Ghost Rider AF head can rotate side to side, look up a little bit It is on a double ball peg. It is fairly limited though, but he can look up a little bit. He can tilt a little bit. Not too bad there. His arms can go out to the side, the shoulder, back down. He does have that butterfly in there, but it doesn't give you a whole lot. Can rotate. He's got a bicep swivel that is kind of hindered, but does work. And is not too gummy on mine. Let me check the other side. I think it's just tight, so, you know, be wary of that. It's got very tight bicep swivel on both sides. Yeah, it's not gummy at all. Like that Kyle Rayner I reviewed. That said, he does have the double elbow and no, you know, major cutouts there. No Cliffs of Dover, I would say, going on. It's clean enough for me. And he does have the ball hinge wrists. So you can rotate at the top, hinge in the middle, rotate at the bottom, give him a proper grip hand, which I do appreciate. And since his fingers are of a softer plastic, you can get the lantern in there quite easily. It's not too difficult. That said, as far as his torso is concerned, you can bend back about that far, bend forward about that far. Not terrible, not great, but better. We're getting better with the ab crunch. You can also rotate up here as well as tilt side to side. You can do the same at the waist. The waist is probably a little easier to move than the diaphragm. I must admit, there's less stuff running into it. That said, his hips can kick forward a decent amount. You can kick back, move his arm out of the way here. Kick out to the side. Almost do the splitsies. He can do the splitsies. That's impressive. He does have a thigh quiver in there, but it's nothing to write home about. It's very minimal. It moves like a notch. So nothing crazy there. Double knee. Not the worst. I think it's better than the last McFarlane figure I reviewed, but not the best. I think the bottom one's a little better than the top one. The top knee joint, they seem to be cutting out like a chunk of plastic on the outer thigh here, and I'm kind of perplexed as to why they do that. But it is what it is. Then as far as his ankles are concerned, he has the ankle balls, so you can hinge them forward and back. Rotate at the top, rocker at the bottom. Toe joint, which is loose on this side, but tight on this side. Can't win them all. And then he has peg holes on the bottom of the feet for the hockey puck display stand. So yeah, really solid figure. I really dig this guy. Again, he looks a little bit more like the CW version than the Blackest Night version as far as the colors are concerned. But if that's something that doesn't bother you, then this is a definite must-have. I really like this figure. It's one of my favorite McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse figures of the year. Faux show. That said, he also has a bit more of a purple tint to the flames instead of a blue tint, which I believe is more comic accurate, the blue over the purple. But I like the purple. The purple is different. It makes me not want to get rid of my old DC Direct / Collectibles one, you know? They're different enough to where I'm happy having them both. Should be worth noting he does have an open hand over here, or as I like to call it, the turn your head and cough hand. Oh yeah! But yeah, really cool figure, man. As far as this lantern is concerned, you can wedge it in his hand like so. He holds it well. I will say it is at a bit of an angle, so if you want him to kind of do this with it, you kind of can't because it's pointing to the side, which kind of sucks. I really want to do that type of pose, but it is what it is. We can't have everything. I'm just glad to have a figure that kind of looks like Ghost Rider in the year of his 50th anniversary, because the fine folks over at Hasbro are doing a very good job at that right now, if I do say so myself. But that's for you guys to decide. But with that being said, let's now move on and take a look at some size comparisons. First up, here is Deathstorm next to the other Black Lantern figures from the McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse line that I will be taking a look at this week for my Halloween Spooktacular Black Lantern, Batman, and Superman. Now, it should be worth noting that all three of these figures were available in the Collect-A-Build Atrocitus wave along with Kyle Rayner. If you were able to collect all four figures, you could put together a really awesome Collect-A-Build Atrocitus figure that is, now, for lack of a better term, slightly oversized, we'll say. That said, as far as scale between these three is concerned, yeah, I'm happy with this. And last, but certainly not least, we have our two regulars, the Mythic Legion's Brother Mandibulus, 11th Spawn, who's not tearing over everyone today because Deathstorm wins by his Ghost Rider hair. So with that being said, time to wrap things up with some final thoughts. Overall, and while I do still find it hilarious that McFarlane Toys gave us a better Ghost Rider figure in their DC Multiverse line over the fine folks over at Hasbro with their Marvel Legends line this past year. I mean, let's face it, they can't even get a crowdfunding campaign off the ground. Jokes aside, even with its inaccuracies, good old Deathstorm here is by far one of my favorite DC Multiverse figures of the year so far, and my favorite figure out of the collectabuild Atrocitus wave. Yeah, you don't need to be 100% comic accurate for me to like you a whole heck of a lot. Although in this case, he does look a lot like Ghost Rider, so my personal bias is shining through quite extensively here. But we still have the Necron Megafig to look at the end of the week, and not to compare a Megafig to a standard figure because that's just not a fair comparison. Spoiler alert, I think he's my favorite. So, with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this review. If you are so inclined, please don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you know whenever I upload more reviews like this one. If you haven't already, please hit me up on Instagram at Overlord Productions. But as always, keep the comments civil, because the world sucks enough as it is, especially when we got a better Ghost Rider figure in the DC Multiverse line than the Marvel Legends line. Need I say it again? Is it his 50th anniversary after all, or not? And until next time, I'll catch you guys later.